a summary, I guess, of where we are. Because we talked about Dharma being the work of our life, what we are created here to be. Right? What the thing that the gift that we are, the thing that comes out of us that can't come out of anybody else. Like, you've got to believe you got that you have this specific gift and this specific way of being, and that the rest of us are waiting for it, by the way. And we started off sometimes because we get these nudges, we get these ideas about what we should be doing. Maybe it's to be this amazing musician. We have amazing musicians already. But maybe you have a dream for that, or to be this teacher or newspaper reporter or a CEO or whatever is your dream. But then we get stuck. We get stuck in that folding chair. And we can't move. Because we know it should be a certain way. You know, I've shared my story about being a minister, and for so long I was stuck right here. I couldn't do it, and I would circle around back to it again, right at here. But the first pillar was really about look to your Dharma. In other words, what is it like? Search it out and to realize that there's a largeness in the smallness. There's a largeness in the smallness of whatever it is. We don't have to be front page news, nor do we want to be, really. We don't have to win the Emmy or the Tony or the Pulitzer Prize or the Nobel Prize. We don't have to be that person. We don't have to accomplish that in order to live our Dharma. To see the largeness in the smallness was simply to do this, to stand up out of the chair and to realize that we are here for a noble and holy purpose. And nobody else can fill those shoes but us. The second pillar was, once we understand what that is, once we get an idea of what that is to do it full out. To do it on purpose. To not just kind of namby-pamby along and dip your toe in a little bit, but to do it on purpose. To do it and practice deliberately on it. That's what the second step is. The second pillar, rather, is to do it on purpose. To have the courage to do this. To actually pick up the chair and set it aside. Right? To set it aside. That's really the third pillar. The second pillar, just to stand up. The third pillar is, am I getting confused now? I think I am. The third pillar is to let go of the fruits. The second pillar was to do it all out. The third pillar last week was to let go of the fruits. And that's simply to stand up and start taking a step. Let go of the fruits means don't be concerned about it, what it should look like. Don't be concerned about getting to a certain point. Simply love the Dharma as it is pouring through you. Simply love it. And to be in the moment. Remember last week I said you cannot be in the moment and loving your Dharma if you're thinking about the way it should be out there. Right? It's impossible, because then you're out there and you're not here. In your mind and in your heart to be fully present. I gave you the example last week of being a potter. And some of you are like doing like this. Yeah, when you're on that wheel, if you're not there, if you're thinking about the beautiful vase that you're about to build, or a beautiful bowl that you want to build, yes, you have to have an idea. You have to put the right amount of clay on that wheel. But the minute you're thinking about what it's going to look like, boom, it's off the wheel and on the floor. And so the third pillar is to let go of the fruits. To not be so concerned about what it looks like. And to simply love doing and acting according to your Dharma, to whatever that is. To simply step out, do it, and let go of the fruits. Well, I told you the fourth pillar is my favorite. And when I say it, you probably say, oh yeah, it figures, the minister would think that is the favorite part of the pillar. And it's this, is to turn it over to God. Because if I'm to stand up from this chair, and if I'm starting to take the steps, the fourth pillar is to step confidently. The fourth pillar is to step knowing that it's not even me who's doing the work. The fourth pillar is to turn it all over to God. To recognize that there's a higher power, there's Shiva, there's Brahma, there's whatever you call it, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, God, Holy Spirit, I don't care what your name for it is, but to know that that is what is behind you. I've said before in here, and I believe it with all my heart, we're not even breathing on our own. It is God breathing us. When is the last time you thought about taking a breath? You have been breathing all night long. You wake up, you had no intention or willpower to breathe. I'm saying God is breathing us. God is living us. Shiva is breathing us. Buddha, Krishna, I don't care the name. There's this universal mind, this universal love, this universal energy and power that is living us. And the fourth pillar is to turn it all over to that. All of it. All of it. And to get out of this personal will of thinking we know what is best for us. Wow. Wow. How do I know this? I mean, we've had experiences for it before, but here's something that's very, pinpoints exactly what this is. You've heard of child savants, right? Child savants. Children who come into this world with this incredibly amazing talent, let's say. This 4-year-old who can play Chopin, right, on the piano. This 6-year-old who can do square roots of numbers like that. These kids who are born, they didn't will themselves anything. I say that is the activity of God right there in that person, in that little one, who is uninhibited by anything they've learned because they haven't been around long enough to even learn that is impossible. Of course it's possible. What about the person who graduates college at age 15? How is that possible? Not through willpower, but through the power of God itself in that person. That's what I believe. And if it's in one person, if it's in that child savant, it's in you. And it's in me. It can't not be that. I just saw something on Facebook about Donald Gould. Did you read my post today? Or something I shared about this homeless vet who played a piano. People were leaving pianos out in California, leaving on the sidewalk, thinking someone would play them. Certainly he sat down and played the piano. Homeless vet, skinny guy, scraggly, happens to be in addiction. The video goes viral, and last year he put out an album. And I'm saying, how did that happen? That was in him. That was in him and not him. He was not the doer. He was simply the conduit through which God revealed itself in him. And I'm saying you have that same thing. And I have that same thing. We can't not have that same thing. I'm sorry, Steve, I keep hitting on this. Do that right here. There we go, we're good. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. That's good. Sometimes you just have to ask for what you want, right? So this is a big step of courage for us to do this, though. It's a big step of courage to not just believe in that, but act as if it's true. To act as if it's true. Here's what Paul writes in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. He talks about faith, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about walking with faith. Walking with faith. But what is faith? I want to tell you what Paul says in the Good News Bible. He says, to have faith is to be sure of the things we expect. To be certain of things we can't see. Faith is the firm foundation under which everything springs forth from. It is our handle on what we can't see. Faith is a spiritual power, I want to tell you. It's not something you have or you don't have. It's like we have an ability to believe what we don't see. We have that ability. You have that, you do. Because you've used that ability before. You've decided something that there was no evidence for and it came true for you, right? Think about it. It's that time maybe you were a swimmer and you're on the swimming block and you're like, I know I'm going to win this race. And then bam, you went on and won it. Things like that have happened where you've just known. But you had no evidence. Maybe you never won that race before. I can tell you this. I never thought I would be up here teaching like this. Never in a million years did I think. But one of the things that sealed the deal for me is some time back, George Dolan from over at Unity took me to a breakfast for ministers when I was the interim minister between Richard and Mindy. And he took me there, and on my place setting, it said, Reverend Paula Zabkar. It was the first time I ever saw that in writing like that. It said, Reverend Paula Zabkar. I was like, I'm going to be that. And I still have it at my computer today. It's been many years later, many steps later. But I said, and there was no evidence that that was going to happen. Really, there was no evidence. Except the evidence that kept bubbling up in me and that bubbles up in you. If you decide to latch onto it. Right? Faith is that spiritual power. And faith and an idea of oneness is what will catapult us into being able to believe that God lives us. This idea of oneness is best not described as it is experienced. Now, most of us have been around long enough to have experienced 9/11. Some of us were pretty young. I'm looking over there. But 9/11, do you remember that in the aftermath of 9/11 how it felt to be on this earth? Do you remember that? I didn't know anybody in New York City. I didn't know anyone who was in the tower. I didn't know anybody who knew anybody that was in the tower. But I walked around with just this something around me the whole time. I felt like this, like something was going to happen. I felt so connected to everybody. Did you have that experience by any chance? Like, wow. Or to realize that there was not an airplane in the sky. It's like, oh, something really has changed, and feel that connection. Maybe you felt it recently with Hurricane Florence. You know how Wilmington changes when we have that kind of event here? Like, people are nicer. People are letting you out. You're asking people how they are in the checkout line at the grocery store, right? We're asking about each other. We've kind of gone through that phase, haven't we? We're back to the old way of being. But that's when we can feel that connection, don't we? We feel that connection with other people. A lot of times during events like that. How about the sadness and the pain last week with the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh? People would come up to me when they knew I was from Pittsburgh because they knew I felt that connection. No more so than anybody else, by the way, just from being from Pittsburgh. But didn't you feel something for those people? Didn't you imagine how that could be and feel that connection? If you read my blog this week, somebody felt it big time. There was a gentleman who won the 50-50 at the Penguins-Washington Capitals hockey game, and instead of taking his 50% of the 50-50, gave it back to the Tree of Synagogue. $19,000. It wasn't a drop in the bucket. All right? Happens all the time. That connection we have. Maybe you're feeling the connection to the Borderline Bar and Grill in California. When you stop and think about it. When you stop and feel what that is. That's oneness, my friends. We don't have to know anybody who died in the fire in California to feel the oneness that we are, to feel the sadness, to feel them calling for our strength. And those two things, I believe, faith and oneness, those two things are what allow us to believe in the power and the presence of God in us. Because what else could it be, my friends? What else could it be? I'm saying that's it. I'm saying that's it. Faith and oneness. Well, there's a story in Stephen Cope's book about Harriet Tubman. Now, Harriet Tubman was born in 1825. She was a slave. She was born into slavery. And at the age of 5, her slave owners decided to separate her from her parents and sent her off to another place. She experienced that separation multiple times as a slave. Multiple times. She was a very diminutive woman. She was small. And she was sent away from her family many times. She happened to find out that her slave owner, when he had died, had left in his will that every slave that was ever on his plantation was supposed to be emancipated, was supposed to be set free. But the person who read that will, never told him. Never told him. When she found that out, she was so angry. And at the age of 27, she says, I either will have liberty or I will have death. There's nothing in between. And she took off. She escaped from her slave owners. Now, escape is just not much of a word to use. She left the South at night, following streams and rivers and through the woods, always traveling at night, hearing the baying of dogs for their coming after her. They had a bounty on her head. And she escaped from the South to Philadelphia, 27 years old. Now, can you imagine? I don't want to go anywhere that's not lit when it's this dark, I mean, And here she is. That's the way she felt. What was driving her. She gets to Philadelphia, and she doesn't know anyone, so she starts to settle in this life, and here's the call that she gets from within her. She gets a call that says, Harriet, you need to go back and get some people out of there. And she's like, whoa, what? You know, are you kidding me? We do that with God, right? I've done that before. Really? That's what you want me to do? It's like Moses and the burning bush. I mean, it's the classic story. You know, you go to the burning bush and God says, well, I want you to lead them out of Egypt. Lead the Israelites out of Egypt. He's like, me? Me? I think you got the wrong one. Here's what Harriet said. Here's in her part of the deal. She said, listen, if you've called me to this, Lord, then you'll damn sure have to do it, because I can't. You know, that's what it is. That's what I'm talking about, this in me that can do what I cannot do. The first person she rescued from the South was her cousin Kizzy. And she went back from Philadelphia, only traveling at night, along the streams, through the forests, following the drinking gourd. They had songs about the drinking gourd, the slaves did. The drinking gourd is the Big Dipper and the North Star. Followed that back, got her cousin out of slavery, and got back to Philadelphia. That so inspired her that she couldn't stop from there on out. She went back and got her brothers and friends, several trips. She began working as an integral part of the Underground Railroad, ferrying more than 750 slaves out of the South. She actually ended up working for the Union Army as a commander to lead spies into Confederate territory. She was hired by the Union Union General, or whatever his name, I don't know his name, but hired by the Union to lead those spies into the South. Never got paid for that, by the way. One of the great injustices of our time, and I'll call it our time. Amazing, amazing work that she did. She didn't know evasion tactics. She didn't know anything about. She wasn't trained to do this in any way. But you know what? She always knew when to stop. She always knew when to go. She became a master of disguise. She would simply do things like this. She would pull her bonnet down over her head, and she would just pray. She would start to pray. And pretty soon, the way opened up for her. I mean, she did some crazy stuff. You should read her biography, which I have not, but it's referenced in this book. Amazing stuff. How did that happen? It's incredible. Here was her motto. If you're tired, keep going. If you're scared, keep going. If you're hungry, keep going. If you want to taste freedom, keep going. Pretty simple, right? One of the guys she worked with on the Underground Railroad said this about her. The strangest thing about this woman is she does not know, or appears not to know, that she has done anything worth notice. This is an outward and visible sign of true Dharma. One does not seek credit. The credit goes to God, goes to the doer. She believed that any person who sought to be guided by God's hand could be. And she said each and every person has the light of God within them. That's it. That's it. I mean, just imagine for a moment this small black slave woman following the drinking gourd with tens of slaves behind her. It's incredible to me. So how do we do it? How do we emulate Harriet Tubman? Maybe I'm inspired to read her biography, by the way, after learning just those few things. Here's the thing that sometimes is confusing for us. How do we know that the guidance we're receiving is actually the God guidance? You know, how do we know that this is the thing? How do we know? Well, there's some guidance in this book that's pretty simple, really. The first step is, you know what? Ask for some guidance. You know, ask. Ask. We have tough times asking for stuff. Sometimes we want to be staunchly independent. We want to show that we can handle everything. But I've shared my simple ask before. When I'm in that quandary, I simply say this: show me. Show me. I'm opening my heart. I encourage you to open your heart. Just show me. If I'm confused, if I'm confounded, if I don't know, ask for guidance. And then the second thing is really important. Listen. Listen for the answer. I mean, listen intently and actively, like as if the answer will show up. Not, oh, I don't know if I'll ever, like, it will. That's what Harriet did. I mean, she knew when to stop. How did she know? How did she know when to stop and go? Listen for the answer. Listen for it. Don't just pass it off as coincidence. Oh, that was just a coincidence. I was just thinking about this and this person showed it. Well, that was just a coincidence. Hello? Listen for the answer. Listen for the answer. Once you get an answer, check it out. Like, check it out. Try it on. When I first started, I had this idea to start Spiritual Soul Center. Renee and I talked about it, but you know that the other thing we did? We invited 12 people to our house so we could bounce it off of them. Like, we wanted to know, is this real? Like, would anybody else be excited about this? Could this possibly be something that made sense? Like, check it out with other people. See what they have to say. Check it out with you. Try it on for a while. And once you start to get some clarity, don't jump right away. Just sit with it a little bit. It doesn't have to start right this minute. You know, my journey to this point in time started in like 2010. Like a long time ago, little things built over time. Like, give it time. Give it time to build in you. Check it out and keep going. But not too fast. We don't have to accomplish it all in one day or 1 hour. The other step is to pray, is to meditate, is to be still. You know, it's something we don't do enough of, don't you think? We want to go get it done. But stop in that clarity and pray and listen again for some guidance. And know that in our pathway to Dharma, there is usually a risk. There is usually a risk in Dharma paths. There's a risk of not succeeding the way you look at it from where you are. And that's why we need to rely on this faith that I'm talking about, and this idea of oneness, to realize that I am not the doer. There will be a risk. The risk for me is, can anybody even show up here? Where was I going to get a music director? I'll tell you what, there was one email and one phone call that got Kay here. I met her at the coffee shop and said, I can't pay you anything. And she said, sign me up. You know? Listen to those sounds. Listen to what comes in front of you. There will always be a risk. But with faith and this idea of oneness planted in us, everything is possible. And once we then can act, and we can depend on what comes from inside, we can let go of our own will and allow God to be the doer in our life. It's pretty simple. It's not always easy. But turning over to God is realizing simply that you're really not in charge. That you're simply here to live the gift that you were, that you are, before you were born. You will know what to do when you know who you are. And who you are is an expression of God. No less. There is no Dharma too small or insignificant. Only the one that is not lived. So let's take that into meditation today. I invite you to get comfortable in your seat. To begin by breathing in and breathing out. Take a cushion if you want to. And to maybe in this time, in this place, let's start at the beginning together. which is the prayer, the mantra, show me. Let's open our hearts, breathing in and breathing out. And let these two simple words, show me. Show me, God. Show me, Krishna. Show me, Holy Spirit. Show me, Creator of all. Let me know. My heart is open now.
know thyself, what a gift. The ability to be hungry for life, the ability of committing to giving and receiving unconditional love. Allow yourself to stop looking up at everything we don't have and start looking around at everything we do. The realization that it is okay to feel and it is okay to break, for it is the only way we realize what we are made of. The beauty in knowing it takes a certain amount of darkness to see the stars. Be that which you already are. Disengage your mind. See how you shine upon all things, freely, openly, effortlessly. See how all things shine within you. Beauty, light, love, and stillness. Knowing yourself is true strength. The love within yourself will be yours forever.
Breathe in and out.